The thing with smoking is, it's kind of too appealing. I know saying that isn't exactly the best thing to admit, but if we're gonna talk about it, let's be honest. So here's what this video is about. The positive side of smoking, yeah, that's a thing. How did cigarettes even come to be? In the third part, we'll see what happens when you light up and how it messes with your brain and body. The fourth part is about cigarette luck. And the fifth and final part, well, let's wrap it up with some movies and TV shows related to our topic today. Here's the deal. Smoking creates a temporary fix for problems. In the moment, it seems like a solution. But when your brain gets used to the nicotine, you're in for a storm of stress and anxiety for the next 72 hours. Just one puff, and boom, the bad feelings disappear and are replaced with a calm. But let's be real. It's not just about physical addiction. Smoking helps you focus. It's like an excuse to take a break, which your mind likes. It eases boredom and even cuts down your appetite. It makes bad moments bearable and good ones feel even better.
And that's exactly why it's so everywhere. You're feeling down because you haven't paid rent, you grab a cigarette and calm down. Everything's going great, light up a cigarette to celebrate. Smoking becomes this social thing too. People spark up together and connect more easily.
The use of tobacco goes way back, over 12,000 years. Native Americans, like the Maya people, used tobacco for religious ceremonies, and on top of that, they had medicinal uses for it. They would burn or brew tobacco to help them reach certain spiritual states. In 1492, Christopher Columbus encountered tobacco during his trip to the Americas. He got some dried tobacco leaves as a gift from the locals, and that's when this plant took off in Europe. By the 16th century, tobacco use started spreading among the people. At first, they smoked it through pipes, but by the 19th century, the invention of cigarette rolling machines led to mass production. Cigarettes got cheaper, and suddenly everyone everywhere had access to them.
But the real question is, what happens when you smoke? How does it affect your body and brain? Cigarettes are made from dried tobacco leaves, and companies add chemicals to make it burn better and deliver the nicotine more effectively. The smoke isn't just water vapor and carbon dioxide. Oh no, there are over 700 chemicals in it. And if you break it down, about 95% of that is gases like carbon dioxide and water vapor, and the remaining 5% is tar. When you take a puff, those tiny particles stick to everything in their path. They coat your throat, tongue, and lungs. The lungs have a built-in filter system, but how does that work? The lungs have these tiny hair-like structures called cilia, which move in waves like a broom, clearing out dust, dirt, and bacteria. They're coated with a slimy layer called mucus, which acts like glue, trapping particles. Then, the cilia work together to send all that junk up to either be coughed out or swallowed. But tar doesn't just leave like that. It forms this sticky brown substance that paralyzes the cilia. When the cilia can't do their job, dangerous particles can get deeper into the lungs and even reach the alveoli, tiny air sacs where actual breathing happens. The walls of these sacs are so thin that oxygen can pass into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide can leave. That's where the nicotine magic kicks in. Nicotine slips right through the thin walls of the alveoli and into the blood. It travels so fast to the brain that you feel it instantly. When it hits the brain, it's like pressing all the buttons on a control panel at once. Loads of neurotransmitters and hormones are released. These are the chemicals that help brain cells communicate. This is how smoking affects the entire body. For example, adrenaline and cortisol make your heart race and get you ready to react. Dopamine gives you that good feeling. It boosts your mood, relaxes you, and even reduces your appetite. Beta endorphins ease pain and stress. But here's the catch. The brain quickly starts fighting the nicotine to get back to normal. As long as nicotine is in the system, everything's fine. But once it wears off, your body starts losing balance. The more you smoke, the harder your body tries to return to its baseline. And that's why nicotine is so addictive.
If that was the only issue, maybe we could deal with it. But nicotine brings a whole bunch of other harmful chemicals along for the ride. Each puff is like passing the joint at a party, and all the chemicals join the fun. Let me introduce you to the crew. Cadmium, lead, arsenic, cyanide, hydrogen peroxide, and nitrous oxide. They cause damage wherever they land. Along with these, carbon monoxide decreases the amount of oxygen your blood can carry. Meanwhile, the cilia in your lungs are struggling even harder, and mucus filled with tar builds up. Unfortunately, some of these cells die. The alveoli can't take the pressure, and a few of them collapse.
The damage is real, like balloons popping, and it's irreversible. The body has to work overtime to get rid of the tar. That's why it starts producing more mucus, trying to make the sticky stuff easier to get rid of. All this mess is why it feels like breathing gets harder and you're constantly coughing. That's when your immune system kicks in, and macrophages are sent to the rescue. These cells are specialists in swallowing up dangerous stuff like bacteria, viruses, and even dead cells. In smokers, there are way more of these cells because their lungs are constantly polluted. But the problem is, nicotine makes these cells sluggish and ineffective. They can't do their job properly. Worse yet, they start releasing chemicals that damage lung tissue and create tiny scars. Over time, these scars build up and turn into fibrosis, making it even harder to breathe.
Nicotine also speeds up your heart rate and constricts your blood vessels. The combination of all these toxins and scars makes the tissues in your body more vulnerable. They start releasing proteins that form blood clots, which narrow the blood vessels even more. The heart and blood circulation system are under pressure, and the heart has to work harder to pump blood through narrower arteries. Then there's your skin. Cigarette chemicals mess with enzymes that break down collagen, the protein that keeps your skin smooth and tight. The result? Wrinkles, which can make you look way older than you actually are. As time goes on, this cycle keeps repeating. Fat and toxins pile up in your blood vessels and tissues, causing organs to fail. The heart struggles harder, blood pressure rises, and the risk of blood clots increases, which could lead to a heart attack or stroke. Almost every smoker eventually ends up with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, meaning the alveoli get damaged and they always struggle for air. From there, things only get worse until the final stage, cancer.
Why? Because the body, especially the lungs, gets flooded with at least 70 carcinogenic substances that drastically raise your risk of cancer. At the same time, your immune system, which should protect you from cancer, gets weakened. That's why smokers have such a high chance of developing cancer. Smoking is one of the most dangerous things you can legally do. A typical smoker loses about 10 years of their life. For some, it might be less, for others, more. You'll never really know how much time you're shaving off. But considering everything I've shared, why can't we just let it go? Well, nicotine is one of the most addictive substances out there, both physically and psychologically. If you start, you're probably going to struggle with it for life. The physical addiction usually lasts only about 3 days, but the psychological addiction is way harder to break because you develop strong habits. Like when you're hanging out with your smoking friends or during your breaks, you feel like you need to light up.
Almost everyone who starts smoking is a teenager. Even though the warning on the pack says cancer-causing, tobacco companies know exactly how to target vulnerable minds and get them hooked on the feel-good effects of nicotine. Without that, their sales would drop and their business would suffer. In 1871, the Lucky Strike brand was introduced by the Arie Peterson Company in Richmond, Virginia. This was chewing tobacco Tobacco you don't burn or smoke, but pack between your teeth to absorb the nicotine. The name Lucky Strike comes from the gold rush era in America, when everyone was looking for a lucky strike, a gold mine, and the company wanted to tell people their product was just as lucky and valuable. By the early 20th century, Lucky Strike switched to making cigarettes, and in 1905, the American Tobacco Company bought them and started producing the cigarettes we know today. What made Lucky Strike stand out from the rest were their clever ads. One of the most famous was their 1917 It's Toasted campaign, which claimed they used heat to dry the tobacco instead of the usual sun-drying method. The company argued that this kept the tobacco's taste better and left fewer harmful chemicals. This popularity even reached the battlefield. During World War II, American soldiers had Lucky Strike cigarettes in their rations. They would flick one around in the pack, calling it their lucky cigarette, to save for when they thought they might need some luck. But no matter how much marketing you throw in, any type of cigarette is bad for you. Whether it's Lucky Strike or our own Marlboro brand, nothing makes heating or tasting it any less harmful. Today, about 1 billion people light up a cigarette every day. It's a shocking number, but thankfully, it's been decreasing. I'm not just saying that. The numbers back me up. In 2000, about 34% of adults smoked, but by 2020, that number dropped to 23%. Still, around 8 million people die each year from smoking-related causes. However, there are plenty of effective ways to quit smoking, and doing so can save your life and health. Unfortunately, the TV series I'm about to recommend is likely to encourage even more people to smoke, and those who don't smoke might be tempted. The series Mad Men takes us to the early 60s, focusing on the life of a stylish and creative advertising executive in New York. You'll get to see how Lucky Strike became a household name through ads, marketing, and manipulation. And on that note, let me tell you what probably got most of us hooked: not hitting that like button on the video or leaving a comment below. You know, the usual routine. Thanks for spending your valuable time with us today.